Callie Monroe, a single mom trying to rebuild her life, bought a crumbling warehouse on the coast of Maine. Locals laughed. It once belonged to a traitor from World War II. But behind a rotting wooden wall, she found an old military badge and a hand-etched map marked with the name of a ship that never appeared in any official records. That map pointed to a buried secret that could change everything the town thought it knew. What if one truth could erase a town's shame? If you believe justice begins with those who refuse to back down, share this story and hit subscribe to help keep it alive. Callie Monroe didn't buy the warehouse because of destiny. She bought it because she was broke. As a recently bankrupt single mom, she needed a place big enough to restart her repair shop, somewhere she could work and keep an eye on her son. The seaside warehouse was the cheapest option within 10 miles. It was nearly falling apart. Leaking roof, moldy walls, rusted doors. But Callie saw something else. Solid concrete floors, a wide sliding door, and nothing left to lose. On her first visit, the real estate agent lowered his voice and muttered, "You sure about this? This place used to belong to Jack Rourke." Callie frowned. "Who's that?" "The traitor from World War II. Everyone in town knows. He disappeared with a supply ship and never came back. People say the place is cursed." Callie just shrugged. She'd heard worse rumors in her life. On moving day, an older woman walking past stopped, stared at her, shook her head, and left without a word. Strange, but familiar. Being a single mom, she was used to people looking at her like a wrinkle in the town's otherwise neat fabric. Callie swept the floor inside the cold warehouse, wiped the dusty windows, and started building shelves. She didn't care about the past, as long as the roof didn't collapse on her or her son. But then, while removing an old breaker panel near the west wall, she found a rusted U.S. military badge, still bearing a clear emblem. It was carefully pinned to the backside of a wooden plank, like someone had left it on purpose. Callie paused. Above a nearby window, scratched into the paint, was a faint line. "This harbor hides the truth." Not graffiti, an engraving. She shone her flashlight at the surrounding boards. One section looked different, newer wood, secured with thick screws. Inside the panel, folded tightly, was a note written in ink. "If you still believe in truth, do not tear down the west wall." That night, Callie didn't go home right away. She sat in the middle of the warehouse, staring at the cracked ceiling, the ocean wind slipping through. Her son was asleep on a blanket near a portable heater. She didn't know what was behind that wall. But something in her gut said, if someone once etched a warning like that, the truth shouldn't stay hidden for one more day. Callie woke up early the next morning, before the sun. She made coffee, packed her flashlight, screwdriver, and headlamp. Her son was still sleeping in the car. She tucked another blanket over him and stepped back into the warehouse. She began removing each panel from the west wall. The inner wood was sturdier, fastened with screws instead of nails, like someone had deliberately sealed it off. Behind the old insulation, Callie's hand brushed something soft, dusty, and damp. It was an old leather map, heavy, frayed at the edges, musty smelling. Not printed, but hand-etched. Deep lines carved into the leather, showing a harbor, several buildings, and one red-marked location. In the corner, a line of German text. Hoffnung, nicht Verrat. Hope, not betrayal. Callie didn't speak German, but the map layout looked eerily familiar. It was the North Pier, now long abandoned. She laid the map on her workbench, studying the lines. There was something urgent about how it was made. No decorations, no flourish, just rough, shaky marks. Whoever etched it didn't do it for art. They did it as a warning. She photographed the map, rolled it up, wrapped it in cloth, and tucked it into her bag. That afternoon, Callie brought it to Elsie's grocery store, the same woman who had watched her silently on moving day. Elsie had once worked as a port clerk after the war. When she saw the map, she said nothing for a long time. Then she reached into a drawer, pulled out a faded folder, flipped through yellowing pages, and pointed at the name written in the map's notes. Mercy Star. It really existed, Callie asked. Elsie nodded. Humanitarian ship, disappeared in 1944. The last known commander was Jack Rourke. Before Callie could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Walk away or regret it. Her hands went cold. This wasn't a prank. Elsie quietly walked over and drew the curtains. You're not the first to look for this, but if you're the last, make sure you're not silent like the rest. Callie stepped outside. The sky had turned dark. She walked back toward the warehouse, one hand gripping the map inside her bag. Across the street, a black car sat silently with no headlights. As Callie looked its way, the engine started, and it drove off slowly, like it just wanted her to know it had been there. Callie didn't stop. She knew she was getting close to something bigger and more dangerous. But if the truth was this close, she couldn't walk away. She went to the town library, where port and military records from World War II were stored. The librarian, an irritable older woman, denied her request. Those files aren't accessible to the public, she said. Callie didn't give up. After nearly 2 hours of explaining her intent and showing photos of the map, the woman sighed and pointed to a misfiled box. Inside were cargo manifests from 1944. Callie flipped through each page until she found one line typed in bold. Shipment 47, unreported aid, Mercy Star. Below it, a messy black ink signature. Roy Tillman. Callie froze. Roy Tillman was the current chairman of the town council. His family had run the port for 3 generations. He was the same man who once declared in front of the whole town, "Now Jack Rourke is a stain on our history." Callie snapped a photo of the document. As she left the library, she felt a presence, eyes at her back, footsteps matching hers. But when she turned, the hallway was empty. That evening, she returned to the warehouse. She opened the door, flipped on the lights, and froze. The back window was shattered. Glass shards covered the floor. On her workbench, the copied map was gone. She rushed to her document pouch and checked the photo backups, which were still there. But someone had clearly broken in. They weren't just watching. They had been inside. Callie turned on every light and checked each corner. Nothing else was missing. But on the table, amid the scattered papers, was a handwritten note in red ink. "You're digging up what should stay buried. Stop now." She picked it up. Her hand trembled. The handwriting wasn't printed or typed. It was fresh, written by someone who had been there recently. The next morning, Callie went to Elsie's grocery store. The door was locked. A printed sign on the window read, "Closed for health reasons. Please do not disturb." She knocked. No answer. The mailbox was overflowing. A quiet dread settled in. Not everyone was silent because they didn't know. Some were silent because they had known too much for too long. Callie spent the next few days researching the North Pier, the location marked on the map. At the county museum archives, she found an aerial photograph from 1943. In it, a small transport ship sat moored at the dock. No name, no markings. The corner of the photo was torn, but the vessel's shape matched Mercy Star exactly, as Elsie had described it. Callie drove out to the site, now just a stretch of crumbling concrete and wind-blown rock. She walked along the broken edge of the pier, then stopped when she spotted a rusted sheet of metal poking out of the muddy brown water. A dock worker nearby barked at her. "This area's off limits, too dangerous." Callie backed away, but not before snapping several photos. She sent the images to a friend who used to work in ship salvage. Weeks later, they confirmed. The fragment matched the forward frame of a WWII-era transport vessel, the same size as Mercy Star. When the salvage crew finally lifted a section of the deck, they found a large iron box locked with 2 layers of latches. Inside were a set of handwritten journals in English, a few Red Cross insignias, and a short yellowed letter signed Jack Rourke. Callie read it on the spot, her eyes burning. If someone finds this, please understand. I didn't run. I didn't betray anyone. I hid 47 children aboard this ship. They had no papers, no place to go. These crates were medicine, food, life. I chose to keep them safe, even if it meant disappearing. Callie sat silently on the damp deck, gripping the letter tight. She couldn't stop thinking about her son. Who would step up if the government ever turned its back on him just for lacking documents? Who would dare do the right thing, even if it meant being called a traitor? When Callie returned to the warehouse that night, she opened the door and froze. The front window was shattered. Red spray paint dripped across the wooden wall in thick, uneven lines. Final warning! She stepped back, heart pounding. Someone had been inside, again. But they wanted her to know this time. They were watching every move. Callie locked the doors and sat down, holding her sleeping son in her arms. She thought of the letter, of the 47 children in 1944, and she understood. If she backed down now, everything would be buried again, forever. Callie sent all her materials, copies of the journals, Rourke's letter, photos of the Mercy Star, to a local newspaper she once trusted. The reporter seemed genuinely interested, promising to look into it and bring justice to light. She left that meeting with a fragile hope. If the town wouldn't listen to her, maybe they would listen to the truth. 3 days later, the article was published. The headline screamed, "Me single mom fakes rescue ship story for attention." The piece dug into Callie's bankruptcy, suggesting she had fabricated a wartime tale for fundraising and forged relics to manipulate public sympathy. The primary source quoted Roy Tillman. "Now, I knew Jack Rourke," he said. "He vanished when his crew needed him most. Now someone's rewriting history for personal gain. This town deserves the truth, not fairy tales." Callie read the article, her hands turning cold. She called the reporter, no answer. Her emails bounced back. The next morning, while dropping her son off at school, she found her truck with all 4 tires slashed. Across the windshield, someone had sprayed in white paint, "Leave." That evening, she returned to the warehouse. The back door had been forced open. All her documents, photos, and copied journals were gone. The iron box that held the original evidence is missing. On the wooden floor lay a torn scrap of paper, part of Rourke's letter, now ripped apart, leaving only a few words. "I didn't betray anyone." Next to it, Callie saw the military badge she had found weeks earlier. It lay scratched and dented, deliberately placed. A message. "We know what you have." She sank to the floor, face in her hands. Her son slept in the car outside, unaware of everything. Callie had always thought she was strong, but now she felt only fear. Not for herself, for her boy. I dragged him into danger, she thought. I've gone too far. She picked up her phone, ready to call the police, but stopped. Instinct told her this wasn't something the police could handle. This was deeper, an old power network that ran too far back. Callie picked up the badge again, gripping it tight. She thought of the 47 nameless children, of Rourke, the man who did the right thing, even if it cost him everything. If he didn't give up, she whispered, then neither can I. 3 days after the break-in, Callie barely left the warehouse. She was terrified, not for herself, but for her 6-year-old son sleeping a few steps away. She hid the badge in a drawer and locked it tight. What little she had left was almost gone, On the fourth night, there was a knock. 3 knocks, soft, clear, steady. Callie didn't turn on the light. She grabbed a screwdriver, hiding it behind her back, and cracked the door open. It was Elsie. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, clutching an old leather bag to her chest. "I left town for a few days," she whispered. "They came for me too. But I still have something they don't know exists." Callie watched as Elsie opened the bag. Inside was a thin leather journal and a film roll, wrapped in aged oilcloth. "Rourke gave this to me," Elsie said, voice trembling. "The night before the ship left port. He didn't trust anyone, except someone who knew what it felt like to be accused of something they didn't do. That was me." Callie sat down, opening the journal. The handwriting was old, but clear. June 12, 1944. "I was ordered to destroy unverified aid cargo. I refused. Those crates held medicine, milk, and life itself, and 47 children." Callie's eyes burned. Elsie handed her the film roll. "I never had the courage to show anyone, but if you still do, finish what I couldn't for 50 years. Callie rushed to a small photo lab still open in town. The images came to life under the dim red light. Children standing on a ship deck, wearing medical ID bracelets, staring toward the camera. None of their names appeared in any official immigration record. She printed the photos and pinned them onto the wooden wall beneath the old carving. "This harbor hides the truth." Then she looked out at her son sleeping in the car and understood why Rourke had chosen to disappear. Because sometimes, protecting life matters more than obedience or reputation. Before leaving, Elsie slipped a note onto Callie's table. It contained the address of Mercy Home Refuge in New Jersey, a facility that had secretly taken in stateless children in 1946. Callie gripped the journal, film, and photos and opened her laptop. "If no one else will tell the story," she said softly, "then I will." The article appeared in a national paper on a Monday morning. The headline wasn't flashy, just plain and direct. "Mercy Star, the ship that wasn't meant to exist." Inside were images, Rourke's handwritten journal, photos from the recovered film, a brass plaque engraved with the names of 47 children, copied from the Mercy Home records in New Jersey. The article was authored by Callie. She had submitted all the materials after a sleepless night. A week later, the story went viral. Historians confirmed that the 47 children survived and were granted asylum in 1946. The Mercy Star was real, and Jack Rourke had never been a traitor. But the town didn't change overnight. Some residents still called her a liar, a disgrace to old values. A small group held signs outside the town hall. "Don't rewrite history to fit your story." But for the first time, others started speaking up. A retired teacher sent her a 1952 yearbook mentioning Rourke donating medicine to a hospital, a detail that had been crossed out. A veteran mailed her an old photo. In the background, a faint outline of a ship docked behind the pier. Callie quietly gathered these fragments of memory like puzzle pieces no one else dared to finish. 3 weeks later, a small memorial was held at the North Pier. No loudspeakers, no news crews. Just a few dozen people, including Callie, her son, Elsie, and a group of local students. Callie stood before a weathered wooden wall and read aloud the final lines from Rourke's journal. "I couldn't save the whole world. But if even one life was saved because of my decision, then I have no regrets." When she finished, her son stepped forward and placed a small flag into the ground beside the rusted remains of the ship's frame. The setting sun cast light across the newly installed memorial plaque, reflecting off the water. Jack Rourke, 1907-1944. He didn't betray anyone. He saved lives. That evening, a clip of the memorial aired on the local news. A reporter tried to question Roy Tillman. He said nothing, just turned away, eyes avoiding the camera. As for Callie, she didn't need praise. She only needed the truth to be acknowledged. And that day, for the first time, it was. Months after the memorial, the old warehouse was restored. New steel beams reinforced the structure. The rusty roof was replaced. The shattered glass doors were swapped for sliding panels. But Callie kept the west wall, where the map had once been hidden, precisely as it was, sealed behind a sheet of protective glass. She named the place Haven Pier. Not a museum, not a commercial garage. It became a small community space, where teens from the town came to learn how to fix engines, dismantle machines, and hear stories that no textbook would ever teach. One afternoon, Callie leaned over to help a boy tighten a bolt. He asked, "Do you think Mr. Rourke was scared when the whole town hated him?" Callie looked up, pausing for a moment. Everyone gets scared, but he still did what was right. That's what matters." Behind her, mounted on the wall, was Jack Rourke's original letter, framed in simple wood. Beneath it, 47 names engraved on a brass plate, arranged like the sail of a ship. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the west window, casting a soft glow across the plaque like scattered sparks of light. One day, Callie received a package with no return address. Inside was an old photo. A young girl standing on a ship's deck, wearing a medical bracelet, face solemn. Tucked with it was a handwritten note. "I was one of the 47. Thank you for giving our rescuer his name back. Emil." Callie didn't say anything. She simply framed the photo and hung it by the front door. Not everyone in town changed. Some still shook their heads as they walked by. There were still whispers behind her at the supermarket. But Callie didn't need everyone to believe her. She only needed the next generation not to forget. One morning, her son sat among a group of new students, listening to a lesson on how to check spark plugs. One of them asked, "Do you think you're a hero?" Callie smiled, shook her head. "No, I'm just someone who didn't back down." She stood at the pier's edge at sunset, staring at the still water. Beside her, the small flag her son once planted still fluttered gently in the wind. The harbor that had been forgotten now had a reason to exist.